Fortnite has had some pretty terrible seasons, and today we're going to be talking about them. That's right everybody, in today's video we're going to be revisiting some of the worst seasons in Fortnite history, going all the way from infamous seasons such as Primal to controversial ones such as Wrecked. Now, I'm going to quickly say this video is going to be a super controversial one, so if you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We're well on the way to 1,000 subscribers, so any help would be greatly appreciated. But hey, with all that yapping out of the way, let's just dive straight into the video. And starting off the video, we're going to talk about what is arguably one of the worst seasons in Fortnite history, something that not even the most diehard of Chapter 4 fans can even defend, and of course, I'm talking about Wilds. Seriously, this has to be one of the most atrocious seasons of all time. I don't even know how this came to be. I'm not even joking about this. There wasn't a single good thing about this season. It's actually incredible to me how bad this season actually was. I mean, it had some of the worst map changes to ever come to the game. It completely ruined the Chapter 4 map, which was devastating to me because I was loving how that map felt after Chapter 4 Season 2. Like, you went from some of the best locations in the game's lifespan with Anvil Square and a bunch of incredible smaller locations that were dotted around the map, and then all of a sudden it just got replaced by this awful, disgusting looking jungle that was impossible to walk around. Like, I was getting stuck in there all the time and it genuinely felt impossible to escape in Zero build. And yeah, you know what, while I'm on that topic, I am going to bring up why it was so hard to walk around in this season, and of course the reason being was the fact that this season literally had no movement, like none at all for like half of the season. It was so confusing. We went from the kinetic blade and the shockwave power to literally nothing, and it felt unbelievably sluggish. I mean, even talking about that, the loot pool itself was just genuinely dreadful. It's one of the worst we've ever had. Of course, you did have the kinetic boomerang, which, do I even really need to say anything about the kinetic boomerang? You also had the flapjack rifle, which I can't really explain it, but it just has the vibes of being 6 out of 10. I mean, the only redeemable thing that came out of the season was the mammoth pistol, and even though it was really good, it still wasn't enough to carry the entire season. And hey, listen, if you've been watching my videos, you're wondering why I'm so forgiving on more recent seasons like Galactic Battle and Wrecked, this is why. I've seen how bad a Fortnite season can get. Genuinely, there was nothing good about this season apart from one single item. It completely ruined the Chapter 4 map, and in extension, it also ruined any fun that I could have gotten out of Chapter 4 Season 4. I wholeheartedly think that this season is only rivaled in its rubbishness by one other season, but we're going to be talking about that one all the way at the end of the video. So you guys are going to have to stick around and find out which one it is. But you know what, we're going to move on from Wilds now, and we're going to talk about another season, which I very famously just do not like, and I'm not going to talk about this season for too long, because I just talked about it last week in my ranking every single Chapter 1 season video, which you guys should totally check out after this video, by the way. And of course, I'm talking about Chapter 1 Season 3. Honestly, this was by far the worst season in Chapter 1. I mean, at least Season 1 was impressive, with it adding so much to the game, you know, being the first season and all, and generally being really fun to play. Season 3, on the other hand, as I have said plenty of times, literally could have been an update. I'm sorry, but it's easily the most mediocre season in Chapter 1. It barely lasted over 2 months at a runtime of 67 days. It had a single map change, which also had nothing to do with the season itself, and the entire season barely added anything new to the game that hadn't already been done before in Chapter 1 Season 1 and Chapter 1 Season 2. I mean, come on guys, as cool as the weapon is, nobody in their right minds would be using the guided rocket launcher against a modern day player. Nobody in their right minds would even think of picking up the heavy shotgun. It's easily the most mediocre in any loot pool it's in. And although it definitely added some really cool items like the cluster clingers and the hand cannon, I'm sorry, but again, this literally could have just been added in the middle of Chapter 1 Season 2 and nobody would have even blinked. And yeah, to be fair, that's exactly how I feel about this season as well. Now, I usually use this terminology for Chapter 1 Season 6, but it definitely felt like the first half of this season was kind of like Season 2 Part 2, and then the second half of the season was entirely build up for Fortnite Season 4. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, this season isn't really bad in the traditional sense, you know, with like unfair items or an awful loot pool. No, I'm sorry, this season was bad kinda just because it didn't have an identity. It had no real reason to exist, it barely added anything new to the game, and its only real purpose in the long run was to set up the arrival of the Meteor for Season 4. It just wasn't great. Alright, here we go guys. Here we go. The first actual controversial pick of this video. And yes, I already know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one. And hey, that's completely fine. This is entirely my opinion. And of course, I'm talking about Fortnite Chapter 5 Season 1. I'm sorry, but the season was a definite turning point for Fortnite, and I just think it was for the worse. Of course, the whole gimmick with this season was the change of focus of the game, you know, moving it over from Battle Royale to the Metaverse, and this completely ruined Battle Royale for seasons and seasons on end. Like, I'm sorry, on paper the season is great, but if you're focusing entirely on the actual Fortnite season, which is of course what I'm doing, this is easily one of the worst the game has ever had. I mean, of course, if you guys don't remember, back in Chapter 4 Season 3, around 1,000 Epic employees were laid off, and while they kept it going for quite some time, you know, we had an incredible run of seasons. You had Chapter 4 Season 4, which was really fun. You then had, of course, Fortnite OG, which, what do I even say about Fortnite OG? But by the time we got to Chapter 5 Season 1, the employee layouts from Wild finally hit the game, and the content felt dry as hell. Like, seriously, there was nothing going on for around half of that season. It was unbelievably empty. Literally, the Winterfest had nothing going on. There was no real mid-season content, apart from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles update, and even then, that wasn't, like, mind-blowing. There wasn't even a story to keep people hooked, so we just kind of had to sit around and play the game. It was bad, man. It was really, really, really bad. And even then, the gameplay itself wasn't good enough to keep itself up. Like, listen, guys, I'm sorry, the weapons were completely ruined this season. Of course, they got given projectile bullets, and then, of course, you also removed any chance of individual playstyles by adding weapon mods. Yeah, I definitely feel like most of the weapon mods really shouldn't have been applicable to every single weapon in the game. Like, ARs suddenly felt like SMGs, SMGs were feeling like ARs, sniper rifles were being used as shotguns. None of these items felt unique, none of them felt different to one another, and you could literally make a full inventory of completely different weapons feel exactly the same with the right attachments. I'm sorry, it just sucked. Also, as I very briefly mentioned, you had some of the most broken weapons in the game's history, like the monster that was the Frenzy Auto shotgun. Genuinely, it haunted that season. And you also had the demon that took the form of the Reaper sniper rifle. It's completely insane that both of these items were in a loot pool at the same time. What was Epic even thinking? And hey, I've gone on record several times saying that I really didn't like Chapter 5. I honestly wouldn't put a single season inside of it above 6.5 out of 10. But if I had a gun to my head and I was forced to choose the worst season out of the whole bunch, I would with full confidence say that this season was the worst of it all. It had the worst map in this chapter, like 3 out of 11 POIs felt identical to each other with Pleasant Piazza, Snoopy Steps, and Ritzy Riviera. You had one of the worst loot pools in the game's history, which was just entirely unfair and it just felt incredibly unbalanced. And you also had one of the worst movement metas in Fortnite history with the grapple blades and the shockwaves. I just gotta say, nothing about this season felt anything like what I want a Fortnite season to be. I'm sorry guys, but there wasn't a single part of this season that I actually enjoyed, and it just wasn't for me. But hey, you know what? We're gonna follow that one up with a season that is definitely more universally hated on, rather than something that everybody seems to love. And of course, I'm talking about Chapter 5 Season 3. Wrecked. I mean, come on guys, what even is there to say about this season at this point? I've talked about it so many times, I've slandered it so many times. If I keep talking about this season, I'm gonna start repeating myself soon. It's just a strange season, like, not even Chapter 5 Glazers enjoy this season. And I think that's so devastating because it absolutely had a 10 out of 10 concept. I mean, I've been playing Fortnite since Chapter 1, and I've been dying for a Wasteland theme for so long. But unfortunately, it just had an awful execution, and I can't even believe the season released in the way it was. Because, of course, when you're talking about this season, you do have to mention the incredibly overpowered items that completely ruined any balance this season would have even had. Of course, you had the Nitro Fists, which were insane. You also had the medallions, which were completely busted. Like, you had one which I believe was infinite ammo, which is insane, and then you had another one which would give you infinite nitro. Oh yeah, that's a good point. You also had nitro, which itself was super strong, but it got nerfed so hard it wasn't even worth picking up by the end of the season. And then to top everything else off, you had the Magneto's gauntlets. Seriously, these are some of the strongest items in the game's lifespan. A lot of people tend to forget about them. I mean, I do understand why they were barely in the game. They were only in the game for a couple of weeks. But seriously though, these things are way over the top. And even then, they weren't even the most overpowered item in this season, because the cherry on top was, of course, the mythic boss cars, and in a more general sense, the car mods that could attach to any of your cars. I gotta say, with the season, I can see what they were going for. You know, they went went for a more make everything strong approach, trying to give everyone an insane item and make it feel incredibly chaotic and over the top, but it just didn't feel like that whatsoever. And instead of having a chaotic atmosphere, it just felt like if you walked into somebody, they could literally shred you in seconds. I mean, the map changes themselves in this season were decent overall. I actually really liked most of the locations that came out in this season, with the exception of Sandy Steps, but they were nowhere near good enough to redeem the season itself. And yeah, honestly, that's one of my biggest pet peeves with this season. It had the bones of a fantastic season. It had the potential to be one of the best seasons in years, and it very nearly was, but I just think it went way too far with every single feature it added, and because of that, I think it joins the ranks of the worst seasons in Fortnite history. But you know what? Coming up next, we're going to start off with a very controversial one. And I say this because it is considered one of the best seasons in Fortnite history, but only in revision. At the time, people were hating it. It was the most miserable season the game had ever had. It was entirely unfair. And of course, I'm talking about Chapter 1, Season 5. Now, whilst this definitely isn't the worst in this video, you've got to understand that once you look past the nostalgia glasses that people have on when they're talking about this season, you got to realize that Chapter 1 Season 5 wasn't all that. Now, you guys can say whatever you want to say about the rest of the season, of course, with like the map additions, which were really good, and the season theming, which was really good. Because of course, if you look back on the season just as it was, you know, without actually experiencing how the gameplay felt, it would seem like a pretty decent season. But when you actually look at how this season felt to play and how the loot pool felt at the time, you will come across one of the most infamous and one of the biggest issues with this season, which of course was the spray meta. Now, I have talked about this time and time again. People just seem to forget about the spray meta and how bad it really was whenever they're talking about this season. But when you actually look at how this season felt to play and how the loot pool felt at the time, you'll understand why I've put this against other unfair seasons such as Chapter 5 Season 3 and Chapter 5 Season 1. The fact that the SMG meta was even allowed to happen should have been taken as a warning for the future of the game. That Fortnite weapons were going to become super overpowered, and that Epic Games wouldn't really do anything about it until like the last week of the season. And you can literally trace the issues that affected seasons like Rex and Shock and Awesome back to this single loot pool. I'm sorry, but this season was just awful to play. You had the submachine gun, you had the P90, you had the drum gun. You had the minigun, you had the tactical submachine gun. It was insane. And that wasn't even all the spray weapons that were in this meta. I mean, listen, the season itself, it wasn't all bad. I mean, there was a reason that when we started playing Season OG, it began in this season. It feels like the first complete Fortnite season, unlike the earlier ones, which were still finding their footing. But I'm sorry, this season was just flawed on a fundamental level, and unfortunately, I just don't think it's as good as others make it out to be. But you know what, we're going to cap off this video with the crown jewel of bad Fortnite seasons. It's literally the worst ranked season on Fortnite.gg, and of course, I'm talking about the one, the only, Primal. Now, this is an incredibly odd season in the fact that literally no single part of it felt good to play. The locations were dreadful, the loot pool was dreadful, there was literally no redeeming quality about this season. Like, of course, we are going to touch up on each and every single one of those points, and we are going to start off on what is easily the biggest issue with the season, with the loot pool. I mean, the whole gimmick of the season was essentially you pick up a makeshift weapon, and they'd be incredibly weak, and to upgrade them, you had to go search out, like, car parts, or pick up some bones or feathers from the animals, and then once you had enough resources, you could upgrade it and turn it into either a primal or a mechanical weapon. And this is definitely where the season got it all wrong. I'm sorry, but a loot pool actively designed to be bad is just going to feel terrible, because it took forever to actually get any of these upgraded items, and even then, if you wanted to get it in like rare or epic or legendary, you had to grind even more. It was a completely idiotic decision to make, and it just killed the pace of the game, because you had to essentially stop everything and go out and hunt all of these mechanical parts so you could actually have a competent inventory. And to make things even worse, at the time, this was the first major deviation from what I call the core loot pool, which is essentially just like the big five from Season 1. So such an extreme switch up was way too sudden for the playbase at the time, and because of this, they rejected it entirely. And even then, even once we got past all of this weapon slander, you also had the entire rest of the season, which was just really, really bad. Like, you had the Spire, which was one of the worst locations we've ever had. Half of the buildings in that location weren't even on the building grid. I actually don't understand how that even came to be. That is such a baffling decision. And to make things even worse, that was basically the only major map update that entire season. Everything else just took an existing location from Chapter 2 Season 5 and ruined it. And to top all of this off, just a little cherry on the top, in this season they happened to add two of the worst items the game has ever seen, with the Recycler Mythic and the Spire Jump Boots. Now, listen, a lot could be said about the Recycler. It had a really good concept on paper, you know, suck around the environment and then shoot it at the opponents, but they ended up just making it so broken and so boring to use that nobody even took it. But the Spire Jump Boots, oh, I have a bone to pick with the Spire Jump Boots. This is literally the worst item in the game's history, ever. Like, ever. If I was going to rank it on a list, this would be all the way at the bottom. I despise this item so deeply. And it's not because it's a bad item per se. No, the issue is the comedic amount of time that it took to actually get this item. Like, you had to go over to one of the 6-5 outposts, and then at those outposts, you had to defeat a Spire Guardian. And of course, you got to remember how big the Chapter 2 map was at this point. You know, this was a fair bit of jogging, and you didn't even have tactical sprinting, because you then had to pick up this weird ball thing, and then you wouldn't be able to use any of the other items. And you'd have to then lug it all the way over to the middle of the map, try and fend off literally any single person that was attacking you. And then once you finally did get all the way up the spire, which by the way you had to manually walk there because you couldn't go on any zip lines, finally put the orb in this hole and it would spit out the Spire Jump Boots. And I can't even stress how stupid this was. And all you really got from it was a triple jump that would take up a slot in your inventory. It just frustrates me so badly. Like, there was no reason to make this item as rare as it was, and then to have the audacity for it to take up an inventory slot was just insane. When it comes to Chapter 2 Season 6, and if you watch any of my content, you know just how strong of an opinion this is. I would rather play through a full entire year of Chapter 5 again than a single day of this season. It just felt nothing like Fortnite. It felt miserable to play, the map changes were awful, the loot pool was awful, and there is definitely an argument to make that this is the worst season the game has ever seen. Alright everybody, thank you so much for sticking all the way till the end of the video. If you want to stick around just a little bit longer, I've got a couple of things to ask you. First off, of course, is if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, so any help would be greatly appreciated. Also, just quickly, if you want to join my Discord server, make sure to click the link in the bio. We have an amazing community and I can't wait to see you there. But hey, at the end of the day, all you really gotta do is stay safe, drink some water, and have a fantastic day. Bye bye!